it's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that.
Yes. And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe is smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason that anybody's adequately explained to me. Makes sense?
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one.
Those videos are only 4 months apart. How did Joe Rogan switch so massively on something so major in just 4 months? Let's talk about it. Wes Huff's appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast has proven to be probably the most consequential episode of his long stretch of doing podcasts ever. And I think by far, it's not been the most viewed one, but I do think it's been the most consequential one for ways that we're going to notice right here. This change is just staggering to see how different Joe Rogan views the universe, how differently he views things like the resurrection. And there are some things that still need to be touched on. People are covering this story as if like Joe Rogan is a full-blown Christian. There's still some stuff here that he says that shows that he still doesn't fully believe in this, but he does seem to be extremely close. And to say, I'm sticking with Jesus, that is incredible. This is the original podcast that everyone has been circulating lately. This is his discussion with Cody Tucker about their frustration with scientific theories sometimes and how that causes them to realize that there are much more reasonable lines of thinking out there that are not the fanciful scientific theories that people try to promote and say, well, maybe this is true, maybe it's not.
I can't. I hate like hypotheticals and like
string theory.
I hate it. That can piss off. I don't need to know any about this.
That one's weird.
Yeah, any of that stuff. I like this happened on this day. This is who was involved. This is what happened.
Right.
Like, hard, that kind of stuff.
Well, space is the ultimate who the f knows because we can only see so far. We see so far, but even so far is only so far.
Well, and then they're saying like it's always expanding, which that can't be true because like what is it expanding into? If space is space, you know, if they're like, oh, it's like blowing up a balloon where everything's okay, but you're blowing up a balloon in a room.
Right.
So what's the room that you're blowing the balloon into? And then that's in a bigger room, and then that's in this.
If you're saying this is what started everything, then what started that? And if you're saying that it's that, then what started that? And it's this infinite regression. And that's obviously led people to saying that there must logically be this first cause, that if the universe is not eternal, therefore God must exist. There must be some uncaused cause or some unmoved mover. This is an argument that a lot of people put forth. This is an argument that Ed Fazer has made, and I've covered that on my channel as well. I'll link that video in the description below.
It's not infinite. It's some sort of donut shape. It like goes back around eventually.
But then who made all that?
Right.
Like, is there a God? Did God make this?
Or is God the universe?
Yeah, but then who made God? And then that bothers me.
Right. But
like, who made that thing?
Yeah, because if the universe is ever expanding, he's saying, and God is the universe, then therefore that universe exists in something somewhere, right? You're thinking of something that is just a step before that. What started the universe? And so then look at how Joe Rogan answers this.
Is that a thing that we think that like because we were born and we die, that we have these biological limitations that we attach to the universe itself?
That's fair. That we see things as being built and destroyed.
That there's always been something. Well, wouldn't it be crazier if there wasn't something at one point in time? That seems even crazier. Then there always has been something. Because if it's just something, if it's just the nature of everything, there is always something, right?
Right.
It couldn't be nothing and then all of a sudden everything. That seems
because what started that? What kicked that off?
Exactly.
What snapped its fingers? Like
that's McKenna's great line. Terrence McKenna had a great line about the difference between science and religion. Is that science only asks you for one miracle. I want you to believe in one miracle, the Big Bang.
Yeah.
One miracle, the Big Bang, and the idea is that a godless universe created everything from just something that is this small.
That's a good one.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
It's because it really is true.
Yes.
And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe is smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason that anybody's adequately explained to me. Makes sense?
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one. Like, Jesus makes more sense.
It makes a whole lot more sense.
People have come back.
So this is the point. The reason why he says, it's kind of crazy because there are people who think about the resurrection and they go, come on, a guy came back from the dead. You're not a serious person. a guy came back from the, and then someone goes, everything was like the size of a period on a piece of paper. It could fit on the head of a pin, and then it exploded and created the universe that you and I live in today. I mean, that makes total sense. I mean, there's no problems with that whatsoever, and it really is just the most reasonable thing. A guy came back from the dead supernaturally. No, that's ridiculous. But then the idea that everything that we know, everything that we exist in, the entire universe of which we don't even know how big it really is. No, yeah, that all started from a little speck-sized thing that blew up somehow and created everything. That makes total sense. You see the lunacy of that? And Joe Rogan is finally realizing it. And I think he's started to realize it again at that very consequential podcast with Wes Huff, where he said this.
It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
So he's going from saying it's hard for anyone, and he's including himself in this, to even entertain this as a reality. And now he's realized they entertain even crazier things as a reality. And this does play in a good bit to the 5 facts of the resurrection that William Lane Craig points out, that the resurrection is actually much more reasonable than the other explanations.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in you and I, right? Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else,
and that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on for. And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well, how
many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the
500 actually, and Wes Huff corrected this later.
Crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus' ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
Do you think...
So you notice that Wes Huff is saying that if Jesus wasn't who he said he was, if this is all just a story, there were people that could have said something. There are people that could have said something, could have debunked that. But what you do have is this unexplainable, I mean, it's explainable, but it's virtually unexplainable, this massive growth of Christianity in the first century. And that's one of the 5 facts of the resurrection. The fact that, how do you explain the firm, hardcore belief, willing to go to the grave for Jesus in the first century that starts? How do you explain that other than the fact that the people that were alive truly did believe that, and there was no way that anyone was going to seriously disprove that because people were going to believe their eyes instead of disbelieving their lying eyes, which, again, is kind of like what science wants us to do sometimes. These scientific theories are often like these fanciful concepts about things, trying to explain the universe that either, like, they just don't jive with basic reality. If you get some super liberal, radical doctor that does like gender reassignment surgeries on children, if you were to ask them, why is that good? Why is that moral? I'm sure that they could out-science you in a conversation, but still, even though they could out-science you, you would hear what they have to say and go, no, I think you've gotten lost in the sauce, dude. I think you've forgotten the plot, which is, this is a horrible thing to do. Yeah, you might know more science than me, but my eyes tell me the truth in this situation, which is so plain that you don't even know what a man is and you don't even know what a woman is anymore. It's not that I'm just some ignorant, like, bigoted person. I just see plain reality. I know what color the sky is. I know what a man is. I know what a woman is. And the fanciful theories and concepts and structures and all this stuff that you're coming up with, it's just a problem. It's a real problem. So in Joe Rogan's defense of the resurrection later on in that Cody Tucker podcast, he starts to promote the idea that Jesus could have come back to life, but maybe in this earthly sense. I can't really tell here. You be the judge.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one. Like, Jesus makes more sense.
It makes sense. a whole lot more sense.
People have come back to life. Like, in fact, one of your videos was about a woman who was hung.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tell that one.
Was it?
If you want to see the clip of Cody Tucker explaining the story in Patreon, I'll include that on the Patreon link. For as little as $5 a month, you can support the channel, get the extended version of every single video that I do. So basically, this woman survives this hanging that they did, and as they're preparing to bury her, they realize that she's still alive, and then the woman comes back to life, but really in this case never died. And so Joe Rogan's saying crazy things have happened. And now, does he mean by this that Jesus survived the resurrection, or does he mean by this that Jesus survived in the sense that his body did die, but he truly did come back to life? I hope that it's the latter. It sounds like it could really go either way. But Wes Huff covered this in their podcast together. Check it out.
There was actually a case very recently where a guy was about to be harvested for organs. They thought he was dead, and this guy started moving again and came back to life. It's a very, very bizarre case because his family had been told that he was going to be harvested for organs. They were preparing for that.
Yeah.
This guy comes back.
Yeah, I mean, we know a lot about Roman crucifixion. And we know that, and we know that they did their job well.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if you look at, say, very skeptical biblical scholars, like non-believing, atheist, agnostic Christian scholars, they will say if we can know anything about Jesus, like they'll cast it doubt on a lot of the things that we read about in the Gospels in terms of the actual historical Jesus of Nazareth. They'll say one thing we can be sure of is that he died by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate, because we have not just multiple attested documents that we refer to as the New Testament, but Roman and Greek and Jewish writers refer to that claim afterwards and talk about the fact that you have this guy, and it's mocked within earliest Christianity. So one of our earliest, in fact, not one of.
So this is the amazing thing about it, and this is where it comes to the 5 facts that William Lane Craig really has defended to the best degree, I think, over anybody else. The death of Jesus under Pontius Pilate by crucifixion is really like not something that is widely disputed anymore. Pretty much even secular scholars agree with this fact. It is a fact. Jesus died by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. And so, therefore, if Jesus did die, it really does rule out that possibility, or it really makes much more unreasonable, let me say, to make it easier, the possibility that Jesus just survived the crucifixion, was alive in a tomb for 3 days, and then rose again, but really he was just alive and survived. And then as Wes Huff points out later in that podcast, the first thing Jesus does is start to assure everybody, peace be with you. He's talking to this group, talking to that group. He's talking to the guys on the road to Emmaus. No, if he had even managed to survive crucifixion, which people didn't do that. If he'd even managed to do that, he would have been in such a state that time would have been of the essence to save his life. Remember, if they were unsure that people were alive, Romans, if they were unsure that the people were alive or not, or if they felt like people were still alive, they broke their legs. And you see this in the Bible, that they decided not to break the legs of Jesus because they were certain that he was dead. They were absolutely certain that he died. So the problem with believing that Jesus survived is that it is actually unreasonable. It is less reasonable because it's basically not even debated anymore that Jesus did die by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. The world at that time all believed that it happened, and that testimony matters more than my 2025 doubt. But let me know what you think about this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider supporting on Patreon. I've been so encouraged to see Joe Rogan's growth in this area. There have been people saying that they've seen him at churches and they've seen him here talking to this guy, talking to that guy in private. And I'm really encouraged to see his growth in this area. I'm excited to see what comes next. It is so cool to see someone actually be willing to respond to truth and respond to reasonable arguments when they present themselves to them. And I hope that if you're watching this, you would have that same spirit too. I love you all so much. God bless you. Lord willing, I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Goodbye.